We are just about 24 hours away from the start of the NHL draft, so we had to bring in a resident hockey expert in the NHL and the AHL, the IceHogs play-by-play man, Mike Folta. And Mike, we'll just get right into it, get started. Do you have any hot takes or predictions on who the Blackhawks might go with at number one?
Number one, that's a tricky one. There's certainly some names floating around. If you haven't been paying attention, Connor Bedard is the consensus number one overall pick. He's who everyone's expecting the Blackhawks to take at number one overall, but there's lots of other good names at the top of this draft, Eric. It's a very top-heavy draft. I think you really can't go wrong within the first few picks, but especially at number one, Connor Bedard out of the WHL seems to be everybody's favorite.
And he's obviously dominating all the talk in the NHL draft, but Blackhawks, they got a lot of draft picks coming up, and there's a lot more important picks than just that number one overall pick. That one's kind of settled, but they still have more coming. Do you have sort of a sense of what they might do later on in the first round of the draft?
It's a little harder to get a sense of what the Blackhawks are going to do throughout the whole draft because they really have so many possibilities. They have 11 draft picks through this 7-round draft here in 2023. They have tons of draft capital, but they also have a big rebuild ahead of them still as well. And Connor Bedard is just one player. He's an exciting player, but you need more than that to fill out a team and to complete that rebuild. And so the Hawks will no doubt use those picks to do that, but they also have the ability to potentially move around in the draft should they so choose. They have another pick at number 19 overall in the first round, and they have 4 first-rounders as well.
Yeah, and there's obviously, like you said, there's more than just, one hole that they have to fill. They intentionally lost a lot of games last year. They kind of successfully did that. So now when you look at that team, what is it that you think they need to address the most going into the draft or even free agency?
Well, you listen to a lot of the pundits out there, and the defensive prospect pool for the Blackhawks seems very strong. We got to see some of those guys in Rockford this past year. Guys like Alex Vlasic, a second-round pick from 2019, who has really started to come into his own, a 6'6" frame. He got a little taste of the NHL this last season. I think people are expecting him to play even more up there this upcoming season. You also have a guy like Isaac Phillips, who's been playing here in Rockford the last couple of years, and it certainly seems like he has the ability to make that jump to the NHL level as well. And you have other defensive prospects that are coming up as well. A guy like Kevin Korchinski, who was taken 7th overall in last year's draft. It sounds like he could be ready to make the jump to pro hockey as well out of the junior ranks. So the defensive prospects seem very strong for the Blackhawks. It seems like they could be in the market to get some forwards along with Connor Bedard to complement that first overall pick, but to pick up some more depth up front throughout the rest of the draft.
They obviously got another forward too, while trading a couple IceHogs away, some longtime IceHogs, Ian Mitchell and Alec Regula being sent over to Boston. Just tell me a little bit about the return they got in that trade.
Yeah, Taylor Hall and Nick Foligno coming over in that trade. Foligno was an unrestricted free agent, or he was going to be a UFA. The Blackhawks made sure to lock him up yesterday for 1 year, $4 million. The Blackhawks trying to get to that salary cap floor that you have to be at in the NHL, so they were able to lock up Foligno, and then they take on the $6 million cap hit of Taylor Hall as well. So you're able to bring in a couple of veteran guys, a couple of guys who have been around the league, who have been on successful teams to really improve that young locker room and provide a veteran stabilizing presence for the Blackhawks, but also guys to play alongside potentially Connor Bedard. You look at Taylor Hall, who was a former number 1 overall pick himself. He can certainly relate to the kind of pressure that Connor Bedard is under, but Taylor Hall, not just a high draft pick, a former MVP as well. He's a high caliber player that's going to be fun to watch in Chicago.
Tell me about what this draft means for the IceHogs, because you sometimes when you think about pro sports, you think about a draft prospect like Bedard, you immediately think he's going to go in the minors. That's not the setup of the NHL and the AHL. So what should IceHogs fans be really looking for when it comes to discussing the NHL draft and what it means for their team?
Well, there's a couple guys that their names are being circulated right now for those first few picks: Connor Bedard, Adam Fantilli, Leo Carlsson out of Sweden. But it does certainly sound like Connor Bedard is the favorite, like we were saying. Whoever is taken first, the IceHogs are not going to see, and that's a good thing. He's going to be up in the NHL making a difference with the Blackhawks. But then on after that, there is a heavy precedent for even first-round picks playing significant time in Rockford. Look back to the last couple seasons when we've had Lucas Reichel here in Rockford. He was a first-round pick back in 2020. We had Nicolas Baudin here, a first-round pick from 2018 as well. In fact, every Blackhawks first-round pick since Patrick Kane has played here with the IceHogs, with the exception of Kevin Hayes. So 12 of the 13 since Patty Kane have played here with the IceHogs. So even first-round picks make their way to Rockford. But a lot of those picks that we will see the IceHogs or the Blackhawks take tonight and tomorrow night as well, those guys are going to take a couple years to get here. The guys who are going to make an impact this season with the IceHogs, those are guys like Nolan Allen, a first-round pick from a couple years ago, Colton Dock, a second-round pick from a couple years ago, who were picked in the 2021 draft. They're going to start to matriculate into the pro system. It takes guys a couple years in pro hockey to make it to the pro game.
And just tell me a little bit about this IceHogs team. I mean, I guess it's hard to have a sense about what the roster might look like going into next year, but they lost 2 longtime defensemen, but still keeping some players around. Just kind of tell me what the vibes are around that team and what you've seen and what they need to do to improve.
Well, we'll certainly learn a lot more over the next couple months, right, as the Blackhawks go through their various camps over the course of the summer. And what the Blackhawks do at their level certainly has a big hand to play in what the IceHogs do. You look at the IceHogs team last season, and exactly half of those players were NHL draft picks. The other half were undrafted. So there's plenty of good players that don't get taken in the draft. You look at a guy like Luke Philp, who was voted team MVP by the IceHogs. He was undrafted, spent some years in the Calgary Flames organization before coming over. So there's a lot of different variables at play for the IceHogs, and we'll start to kind of sort out those variables, but that starts in these couple nights here with the NHL draft and what the Blackhawks, what direction they decide to move in.
Well, you're going to be a busy man in the next couple weeks. I appreciate it, Mike. That is all the time we have for sports. We'll be right back to wrap things up right after the break.